The father who actually brought her up, who paid for her private education while her mother was in jail. Those words, spoken live on GB News, sent shockwaves through the royal commentary world on a crisp autumn afternoon that would change everything. For decades, whispers have circulated about Doria Ragland's mysterious disappearance from her daughter Meghan Markle's life during those crucial teenage years. Rumors swirled, questions mounted, but one topic remained shrouded in absolute secrecy. Where exactly was Doria Ragland when her daughter needed her most? What did those who claim to know the truth really want to reveal? Join us as we uncover the stunning on-air confession that may finally answer the question the world has been asking since Meghan Markle walked down the aisle at Windsor Castle. It all began quietly on a routine panel discussion that seemed destined for forgotten obscurity. GB News contributor Carol Malone sat alongside her colleagues. The cameras rolling, another day dissecting the never-ending drama surrounding the Duke and Duchess of Sussex. But what happened next was anything but routine. As Malone spoke about Meghan's relationship with her father, Thomas Markle, who remained hospitalized and estranged from both his daughter and former wife, she dropped a claim so explosive that her co-panelist immediately interrupted. The father who actually brought her up, who paid for her private education while her mother was in jail, Malone stated with unflinching directness. The studio fell into stunned silence. "When was her mom in jail?" came the shocked response. "Years ago," Malone replied calmly, as if discussing the weather rather than detonating a bombshell about the Duchess of Sussex's family history. The exchange, captured on live television and impossible to retract, spread across social media within hours. This wasn't the first time allegations about Doria's past had surfaced, mind you. Respected royal biographer Tom Bower had hinted at similar circumstances in his book Revenge, a deep dive into Meghan's previous life before royalty. Lady Colin Campbell and Samantha Markle, Meghan's estranged half-sister, had also made veiled references to Doria's unexplained absence during special episodes of Dan Wootton's show Outspoken. But never before had someone stated it so plainly, so publicly, with such certainty on mainstream television. The claims suggested proximity to drugs, unexplained gaps in the timeline of Doria's presence in her daughter's life, and a pattern of absence that coincided suspiciously with Meghan's formative years. To understand the weight of these allegations, we must travel back to the beginning, to the sunny streets of Los Angeles, where a young biracial girl named Rachel Meghan Markle grew up navigating two worlds. Born on August 4, 1981, Meghan entered a family already fractured by complexity. Her father, Thomas Markle, was a respected Emmy Award-winning lighting director in Hollywood, a man who had worked on iconic shows like Married with Children and General Hospital. Her mother, Doria Ragland, was a yoga instructor and social worker, a free-spirited woman with dreadlocks who seemed to embody the California lifestyle. For the first few years of Meghan's life, photographs show a seemingly happy family unit, a little girl with curly hair beaming between her parents at birthday parties and school events. But then something shifted. Somewhere around the time Meghan entered her teenage years, around 1995 or 1996, Doria Ragland simply vanished from the public record. No photographs with her daughter at graduations, no presence at school events, no trace in any documentation for what multiple sources claim was nearly a decade. Thomas Markle became the sole parent, paying for Meghan's tuition at the prestigious Immaculate Heart High School, an all-girls Catholic institution that cost tens of thousands of dollars annually. He drove her to auditions, supported her burgeoning interest in acting, and provided the stable home environment that would eventually launch her to stardom on the legal drama Suits. Where was Doria during these critical years? The official narrative, the one carefully constructed and maintained by those close to Meghan, suggested Doria had simply pursued her own path, perhaps living in a different city, perhaps focusing on her career. But royal commentator Natasha, known online as According to Taz, painted a far more troubling picture during her appearance on Outspoken. "I've got to be careful here, Dan," she said, choosing her words with the precision of someone navigating a legal minefield. "But I think it's obvious that Doria was away for a large amount of time, which would be consistent with a prison sentence. I've also heard stories over the years that she joined a hippie commune, which is also believable when you think of Doria. She looks like someone that would be a hippie. The hippie commune theory had circulated for years in certain circles, a convenient explanation that avoided the harder questions about criminal records and incarceration. But Natasha didn't stop there, pushing beyond comfortable speculation into uncomfortable territory. She just decided she didn't want to be a mom anymore, she continued. You know, you do read stories like this. It's clearly obvious that she was away for a length of time. She does seem to have been around her daughter when she was younger, and then she got back involved when Meghan was an older teenager. You saw her at her graduation. Indeed, Doria reappeared in Meghan's life like a ghost materializing from the ether, present once again for her daughter's college graduation from Northwestern University in 2003. By then, Meghan was 22 years old, a young woman who had spent her most formative years without her mother's daily presence. The gap, as Natasha called it, remained unexplained, undiscussed, buried beneath layers of carefully curated public relations messaging that would only intensify once Meghan became a working royal. But was Doria really just a free spirit who wandered away from motherhood, or was there something far more serious at play? The evidence, scattered across various sources and testimonies, suggests a pattern that went beyond simple parental absence. Lady Colin Campbell, a controversial but well-connected royal author, had spoken extensively about Doria's involvement with drugs during that period. Not as a user, necessarily, but in proximity to the drug trade in ways that raised serious questions. Carol Malone's on-air claim about jail time suddenly took on new significance when viewed through this lens. If true, if Doria Ragland had indeed served a prison sentence, it would explain not just her physical absence but the desperate attempts to keep that information buried. The relationship between Meghan and her father during those years tells its own story, one of devotion, sacrifice, and eventually, heartbreaking betrayal. Thomas Markle worked tirelessly in an industry known for its grueling hours and demanding schedules. As a lighting director, he often labored 16-hour days on set, then came home to ensure his daughter had everything she needed. He attended her school plays, encouraged her activism even as a young girl when she famously campaigned to change a sexist dish soap commercial, and saved every penny to give her opportunities he'd never had himself. "Meghan has always been my princess," Thomas told reporters years later, his voice cracking with emotion. "I gave her everything I had." Those who knew Thomas during this period describe a man fiercely protective of his daughter's privacy and future. He shielded Meghan from the uglier aspects of Hollywood, insisted she focus on education over early acting roles, and made sure she understood the value of hard work. Friends recall seeing him at Meghan's high school events, always alone, always supportive, filling the role of both mother and father with quiet determination. He was there for every milestone, every challenge, every triumph, creating a stability that seemed unshakable until the day his daughter met a British prince and everything changed. The turning point came not in Meghan's childhood but decades later, in the spring of 2018, as the world prepared for the royal wedding of the century, as millions anticipated watching Meghan Markle walk down the aisle of St. George's Chapel at Windsor Castle on May 19th, Thomas Markle found himself at the center of a media firestorm that would destroy his relationship with his daughter forever. Paparazzi photographs had emerged showing Thomas seemingly participating in staged photo shoots, images of him reading a book about Britain, looking at pictures of Harry and Meghan on a computer, being fitted for a wedding suit. The photos, it was revealed, had been arranged and paid for, a desperate attempt by a man living in Mexico to improve his public image and earn some money before his daughter's wedding. The backlash was swift and brutal. Thomas became overnight tabloid fodder, portrayed as a money-grabbing opportunist trying to capitalize on his daughter's royal connection. But those close to the situation tell a more nuanced story. Thomas Markle had been hounded by paparazzi for months, photographed buying toilet paper, taking out trash, looking disheveled and unprepared for the global spotlight about to engulf him. A photographer approached him with what seemed like a solution, a chance to show himself in a more dignified light while earning 5 figures that could help with mounting expenses. Thomas, naive to the ways of modern media and royal protocol, agreed. When the staged nature of the photos was exposed just days before the wedding, Meghan reportedly felt betrayed. But then came the moment that would cement the permanent rupture. Thomas Markle suffered a heart attack, whether brought on by stress, the media circus, or pre-existing health conditions remained unclear, but the timing couldn't have been worse. Thomas informed Meghan he couldn't attend the wedding, couldn't walk his daughter down the aisle as planned, leaving her to navigate one of the most important days of her life without the father who had raised her. In the days that followed, as the world watched Windsor prepare for a fairy tale wedding, a different drama played out behind the scenes. Thomas Markle, recovering in a Mexican hospital, gave interviews to TMZ and other outlets, explaining his decisions, defending his actions, expressing his love for his daughter. Each interview only deepened the chasm between father and child. Meghan moved forward with the wedding, choosing instead to have Prince Charles walk her partially down the aisle after she began the walk alone, a powerful image of independence that was hailed as feminist and modern but also spoke to a profound absence. Since that day, May 19, 2018, Thomas Markle has not seen or spoken to his daughter. He has met neither of his grandchildren, Archie Harrison or Lilibet Diana. He has watched from afar as his daughter and her husband left the royal family, moved to California, and built a new life just hours from where he lives. He has suffered multiple heart attacks, undergone surgery, and repeatedly pleaded publicly for reconciliation, for a chance to meet his grandchildren, for any contact at all. The silence from Meghan has remained absolute, unbroken, final. Yet during this same period of complete estrangement from her father, Doria Ragland became the only family member to attend the royal wedding. Photographs show her sitting alone in St. George's Chapel, dignified in her pale green Oscar de la Renta dress and fascinator, representing Meghan's entire family in that historic moment. Doria became a fixture in the Sussex narrative, the devoted mother, the supportive grandmother, the loving presence who flew to Britain to be with Meghan during her pregnancy and stayed to help with baby Archie. She appears regularly in carefully staged photographs, FaceTiming with the grandchildren, visiting Meghan in Montecito, embodying the role of doting matriarch. The contrast between how Meghan treats these two parents couldn't be more stark. 1. The father who raised her through her teenage years, paid for her education, and sacrificed his career to ensure her success, discarded completely despite his desperate pleas and failing health. The other, the mother who vanished for nearly a decade during Meghan's formative years, embraced fully without any public accounting for that lengthy absence. This disparity has not gone unnoticed by royal commentators and the public alike, fueling speculation about what exactly Doria knows, what leverage she might hold, what secrets bind mother and daughter in ways that apparently don't extend to Thomas. Carol Malone's on-air comments gave voice to these unspoken questions. It's her compassion for the father who actually brought her up, who paid for her private education while her mother was in jail, who took huge care of her, Malone stated, her tone mixing disbelief with frustration. And she's not seen him in the latter years. More importantly, she's not just not seen him, she's totally snubbed him. The old gentleman now could be dying. He needs to see his daughter. The response from Meghan's defenders was immediate and predictable. Jonathan, another panelist on the show, attempted to redirect the conversation, comparing the situation to Prince Harry's own estrangement from King Charles during his cancer treatment. "Is this other people's business, or should we just leave them to it?" he asked. It's Meghan's decision whether she goes or not. But the comparison felt hollow, the deflection transparent, especially when the conversation quickly shifted to discussing King Charles's enlarged prostate, a topic that allowed the panel to move away from the uncomfortable questions about Doria's past. For those following the Sussex saga closely, Carol Malone's claim represented a culmination of years of breadcrumbs, hints, and half-spoken truths. Tom Bower's book Revenge had delved deep into Meghan's pre-royal life, interviewing dozens of sources from her past, painting a portrait of an ambitious woman who carefully cultivated relationships that could advance her career and just as carefully discarded those who no longer served that purpose. Bower's reporting on Doria was notably careful, legally precise, but he made clear through his chronology that Doria's absence during Meghan's teenage years was both prolonged and unexplained. Samantha Markle, Meghan's estranged half-sister, had been even more direct in her various interviews and her own book, The Diary of Princess Pushy's Sister. Samantha claimed to have documentation of Doria's activities during that period, hints at criminal records, suggestions of behavior that would shock the public if fully revealed. But Samantha's credibility remained questionable to many, tainted by her obvious anger at being excluded from Meghan's life and her willingness to speak to any media outlet that would pay for her story. Lady Colin Campbell represented a different caliber of source. A controversial figure in her own right, Lady C nonetheless moved in royal circles, had access to information beyond what typical journalists could obtain, and had a track record of making claims that initially seemed outrageous but later proved accurate. Her comments about Doria's involvement with drugs, her suggestions about activities that would be consistent with incarceration, carried more weight precisely because she was willing to speak on the record while others only whispered off it. And now Carol Malone, a mainstream media figure on a legitimate news network, had stated plainly what others had only implied. The question became not whether these claims were true, but whether they could ever be definitively proven, whether Doria's past would remain forever obscured by the protective machinery of celebrity public relations and Meghan's own determination to control her narrative. Throughout all of this, one fact remains undeniable and deeply troubling. Thomas Markle, the man who Carol Malone rightly noted actually raised Meghan during the years Doria was absent, sits in a hospital bed, his health failing, desperately hoping for a phone call that will never come. He has made his mistakes, certainly, the staged photographs chief among them. But do those mistakes truly justify a complete and permanent severing of all relationship, especially from a daughter who speaks publicly about compassion, kindness, and the importance of family? Meghan's defenders argue that she has every right to set boundaries, to protect herself from family members who have spoken to the press, to choose who participates in her children's lives. They point out that Thomas has given numerous paid interviews, continuing to discuss his daughter publicly despite her obvious desire for privacy. But critics counter that Thomas only began speaking to media after being completely cut off, after his health crisis was met with silence, after his repeated private attempts at reconciliation were ignored. What choice did he have but to speak publicly when private channels were closed? The situation with Doria complicates this narrative further. If Carol Malone's claims are accurate, if Doria indeed served time in prison during Meghan's youth, then Meghan has chosen to maintain a relationship with a parent who abandoned her during critical developmental years while cutting off the parent who stepped up during that same period. If the claims are false, if Doria's absence had some other explanation, then why hasn't that explanation ever been offered? Why does the mystery persist? Why do those close to Meghan dance around the topic with such obvious legal caution? Royal commentator Natasha offered perhaps the most compelling analysis of this dynamic during her appearance on Outspoken. "There is a big gap in between that I think needs to be explained," she said, referring to Doria's absence. "And when you look at what Meghan did, which has cut her father out of her life, the father who raised her for all of those years when her mom wasn't around, it just doesn't seem to add up." Natasha's assessment cut to the heart of the matter. Logic, basic human decency, would suggest gratitude and loyalty toward the parent who provided stability during a turbulent time. Instead, the opposite occurred, suggesting either a level of coldness that challenges Meghan's carefully crafted public persona or knowledge of information that hasn't been made public. The implications extend beyond one family's dysfunction. Meghan Markle has positioned herself as a champion of social justice, of speaking truth to power, of giving voice to the voiceless. She and Prince Harry have built their post-royal brand on authenticity, on sharing their truth, as they described it in their explosive interview with Oprah Winfrey. Yet when it comes to her own family, to the man who raised her and now begs for contact as his health fails, Meghan's truth remains silent. The contradiction has not gone unnoticed. Even as Thomas Markle's health continues to deteriorate, even as he suffers heart attacks and strokes that leave him weakened and desperate, Meghan maintains her distance. Friends of Thomas report that he keeps his phone nearby at all times, hoping against hope that it will ring, that he'll hear his daughter's voice, that she'll grant him the opportunity to meet Archie and Lilibet before it's too late. That call has never come. Instead, Thomas watches from afar as Doria enjoys the relationship he's been denied, as his grandchildren grow up knowing nothing of the grandfather who helped make their mother who she is. The public reaction to Carol Malone's comments revealed deep divisions in how people view the Sussexes. Meghan's supporters immediately labeled the claims as racist attacks on Doria, as attempts to smear a black woman with unsubstantiated allegations about criminality. They pointed out, correctly, that no arrest records had been produced, no mugshots published, no concrete evidence offered beyond speculation and innuendo. The absence of proof, they argued, should end the conversation entirely. But critics responded that the very lack of information was itself suspicious. Public records from that era should exist if Doria was indeed incarcerated. The fact that such records haven't surfaced could mean the claims are false, or it could mean they've been successfully suppressed, sealed, or expunged. The gap in Doria's presence during Meghan's life is documented through photographs and school records, they argued. Something kept Doria away during those crucial years. If it wasn't prison, if it wasn't a hippie commune, then what was it? The racial dimension of these allegations cannot be ignored. Doria Ragland is a black woman, and the history of the criminal justice system's disproportionate impact on black Americans is well documented and horrific. Accusations of criminal behavior against a black woman carry weight and implications that similar claims about a white person might not. This reality makes Carol Malone's on-air statement even more explosive, even more fraught, even more likely to be viewed through the lens of racial bias rather than factual inquiry. Yet at the same time, Meghan herself has made her biracial identity central to her public narrative. She has spoken extensively about facing racism within the royal family, about concerns over Archie's skin color, about feeling unsupported in her struggles with mental health. If Doria's absence during Meghan's formative years was indeed due to incarceration in a system that disproportionately targets black Americans, that would be a powerful story of overcoming systemic injustice, of a family reunited despite institutional barriers. Why wouldn't Meghan embrace that narrative if it were true? Why the secrecy and silence? These questions remain unanswered as the controversy continues to simmer. GB News, for their part, did not apologize for Carol Malone's comments, did not issue a retraction, did not walk back the claims. The network's silence on the matter speaks volumes about their confidence in the underlying facts, or at least their willingness to defend the statement against potential legal challenge. Meghan and Harry's legal team, typically quick to threaten lawsuits over perceived invasions of privacy or false claims, have remained notably quiet about this particular allegation. As the years pass and Thomas Markle's health continues to fail, the tragedy of this situation deepens. Here is a man who gave everything for his daughter's success, who sacrificed his own career ambitions to ensure she had every opportunity, who remained present and devoted during a period when her mother was inexplicably absent. His reward has been complete abandonment, public humiliation, and the knowledge that he will likely die without ever meeting his grandchildren. Meanwhile, Doria Ragland remains firmly ensconced in the Sussex inner circle, her past seemingly irrelevant to her present status as beloved grandmother and trusted confidant. Whatever happened during those missing years, whatever truth lies behind the carefully constructed public image, Meghan has chosen to embrace her mother fully while rejecting her father completely. The contrast raises uncomfortable questions about loyalty, about gratitude, about the selective nature of Meghan's commitment to truth-telling. Even in the absence of definitive proof about Doria's past, even without smoking gun documents that would settle the matter conclusively, Carol Malone's on-air claim has permanently altered the conversation around Meghan Markle's family dynamics. The words cannot be unsaid, the questions cannot be unasked, the suspicions cannot be erased. Whether prison, commune, or some other explanation eventually emerges for Doria's decade-long absence from her daughter's life, the basic fact remains undeniable: Thomas Markle was there when Doria was not. That truth, more than any allegation or speculation, should inform how we view Meghan's treatment of her father. A man who stepped up, who provided stability during chaos, who loved unconditionally, deserves better than what he has received. His mistakes, real as they are, pale in comparison to the fundamental abandonment he now experiences. As Thomas ages, as his health crumbles, as time runs out for any possible reconciliation, the tragedy of this estrangement becomes more acute with each passing day. The voice of Carol Malone, speaking those words on live television, may have finally given public expression to what many have long suspected and whispered privately. Whether her claim about Doria's imprisonment proves accurate or not, she has ensured that the question will continue to haunt Meghan's carefully managed public image. The Duchess of Sussex can control many things through lawyers and publicists and strategic media placements, but she cannot control the basic human response to a daughter who embraces one parent while abandoning another without clear justification. What do you think really happened during those missing years? Should Meghan reconcile with her father before it's too late? Share your thoughts in the comments below. If you found this deep dive into royal family secrets revealing, make sure to like this video and subscribe to our channel for more uncensored analysis of the stories the mainstream media won't fully tell. The truth about the royals is more complex, more troubling, and more fascinating than the fairy tales we're usually sold, and we're committed to bringing you that truth, no matter how uncomfortable it might be.